households into total darkness. In September, Nigeria witnessed about 3 grid collapse, which prompted Nigerians to cry out to government over constant power failure. In 2022 alone, Nigeria witnessed 8 national grid collapses, and the trend continued into this year. Why is having constant and stable electricity such a tall order to achieve? That's a big question. Joining us in the studio is Public Affairs Analyst Olusegun Okwade. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Merry Christmas in advance.
Yeah, well, when you just mentioned that, you break my heart to say we're indeed celebrating Christmas. But, well, with the little that we have, we're going to do it. Let me say Merry Christmas to you. Okay. I can see all over you Christmas.
I'm not wearing red, not yet.
You don't need to wear red before you know someone is celebrating Christmas.
You don't have to wear red. She's got red. Is it red lips or pink lips? At least there's an iota of red.
Of course.
Anyway, let's come back to the matter of electricity. Why is it so difficult for us to address this matter of grid collapse over the years? Successive governments have always promised to do something. We have invested a lot into this sector, yet we are not seeing that stability we need. Even the government admitted, if you look at the papers this morning, that even the power privatization has been disappointing so far.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll start by giving a little background when it comes to power sector. We have 3 level when it comes to this power issue: the generating aspect, the transmission aspect, and the distribution aspect. Right. And 2 of the value chain, which is the generation and the distribution, has already been taken off the government into the private ends. I'm sure you know most of our generating station was actually sold to individuals so that we can generate more. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, since 2013 till now, how many have we been able to move from where we were? I think when they sold it, we were at about 3,000, 4,000, and now the highest I've heard is about 6,000, megawatts. As regard the generation, the transmission is still only controlled by the government. And a lot of investment we have seen. See, one thing is for you to generate it, somebody should be able to wield it so that you and I and the industries can actually benefit from it. And a lot of investment we've seen also in transmission with Siemens coming to take over certain businesses. And since they took over of that project, we've seen repeatedly several collapses. And you want to ask, what is the reason for this? But let me deal with the third arm that you and I are very conversant with. That's the distribution arm. So those are the ones that we call the old days NEPA. And maybe these days power, PHCN. But now they've actually metamorphosed into individual of saying this disco, that disco, this disco. Those are the ones we're very close to it. They actually service the industries and the residential people. But be that it may, the topic of saying we are having repeatedly collapsed is something that happens between the transmission and the distribution sector. There's this generator that actually, bring out and transmit, wield the power from the transmission arm to the distribution arm. And there are allowances of what it can actually tolerate. When you get those things, it's like demand and supply. I have this to give to you. So if you don't absorb it and throw it back to me, it throws the generator off. If it's out of the scope of the allowances that I can accommodate, certain percentage of it is saying, okay, if I push this to you, if you return, and this is able to, definitely I will absorb it. But if I can't, the system reads it because it's automated. It sends it and says, no, this thing I can't accommodate. It's supposed to be going out. And I'll just trade and you just get that system collapse. And that has actually been the major problem. And if you see part of what the paper is saying, it seems to be everything about power this morning, that the privatization itself has actually not been impressive, not what we expected when we had that 10 years ago. And we have this to say that some of the discos are actually putting their best. Some has actually failed the citizen in terms of some of the things. And it calls for what some of us said when this privatization scheme was actually being put in place. Did we carry out the due diligence expected of it, or is it about who has the money to buy into those things and do not have the technical know-how? I want to take us back to when Batunaji was the Minister of Power. Still, it's as if we've gone to import power from somewhere to satisfy us, because at that period, we had steady supply of electricity. And it's to tell you that when someone who understands the business is in charge of it, he knows how to manage some of the lapses that even the people that are reporting to him are going to create. But what we've seen now is that year in, year out, we have people who do not understand the rudiment of what power sector is all about. And during the time of privatization, you discover that due diligence were carried out, but I can tell you that 5 of the distribution company, as we speak, has actually been taken over by their financier because of the level of failure that they've expected. You see, a lot of people will tell you that, there is so much money in the power sector. But you ask yourself, when you don't give it out, you don't take. Most especially the distribution company. There are certain investments that they promised as at 2013 that they were actually going to do into the sector. People like us that major in that sector, we've not seen it. We have
on whose part now?
On the distribution company.
Right.
They came in, invested, gave their own fee and promised to give infrastructure development in that sector. I'm telling you, some of the infrastructure that some of these disco are, if indeed we try to fusion in 24-hour, 24/7 power supply into it, it will collapse. I'm not even talking of transmission to the distribution now. Even from the distribution within their network, because some of those infrastructure, when you want to talk about the transformers, they are long overdue. Some of them requires replacement. And the other arm of it that should have guaranteed transparency is where you and I always argue about meters.
Metering.
Metering has actually been the wild gap in metering, and the quality of delivery has actually made some of these distribution companies not to get the necessary resources, recoup their investment. And we've said it. People no longer trust this estimated billing. Because if you and I are together, I'm on meter, and I use a consumption of 10,000 in a month, and you are getting an estimated bill of 40,000, do I expect you to pay it? And what you've seen some early does is that, okay, Vero, you have a prepaid meter. How much do you buy in a month? You say, I'm using 10,000, and you are managing your supply. He is not managing his supply. Because what several does is that, because it's estimated billing, I own my supply and let it just run. Forgetting that what you are doing is actually affecting that infrastructure we are complaining on. And it's like you are just running your car, not moving anywhere. Just start the ignition and it's running. I'm sure you know that you are burning the fuel.
Either way, whether you left your appliances on or not, estimated billing can never be a better way of...
And that's why we have asked for the close in the metering gap, of which some of the discos are trying their best. But, of late, NEC has its own input that has actually impacted on the distribution companies. Right. They were actually agitating because some of these things are actually, imported. And when dollar, rised the other time, they requested that the cost of meter should be increased. And it links out for so many months before they agree to increase it around September.
That's right.
Currently, those discos are battling with the backlog of what they are. But you can imagine buying at an high price to service an old, cost of people that are paid that have not met their demand. Is actually creating those gaps.
I would like also to talk about the role of the state, because President Bola Tinubu assented to the electricity bill, which empowers states, companies, and individuals to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity, which is repealing the Electricity and Power Sector Reform Act of 2005. Even former President Buhari also signed some, bill into law to ensure that none of these things are consolidated, the law relating to the Nigerian electricity supply industry. That's the NESI.
NESI.
So how do you think this will help in tackling the electricity generation and distribution across the 36 states of the Federation. Do you feel that the states will be able rather to ensure that we have adequate power supply?
First and foremost, investment in power is huge. And we must come out to say it's not something to just dabble into. If states are going into it, currently, majority of the states are looking into laws, because the current laws that we have, we are looking how it's going to, impact on the state having access to it. I'm sure we have just 11 distribution companies that cut across the 36 states. In Lagos, we have 2. Ibadan Disco cut across 4 states. So how are the 4 states going to, come together to see how they make the law that will actually impact? Ibadan is actually taking care of Ogun, or your state on its own, or Osun, part of Ondo, Kwara, in totality, that's about 5-6 states. So these states needs to come together and see how we have a fair share of these things.
It's difficult for them to do.
But, if it is just a state, like we have in Lagos, we have 2. We are just fortunate. We have 2, Eko and Ikeja, of which Lagos State can actually look at way of actually, working with the electricity board to see how they galvanize the rules and make use of and exploit. And come to look at some of the things. We have said it that aside the national grid, there is this IPP project that we expected the states to invest in to generate even on their own. Lagos State started it, and I think I'll give that credit to the current president who initiated that thing during his administration years back. And you discover that this IPP is already providing supply to areas in CBD, in Alausa, and that you can monitor. We have said it that even part of the value chain, can you start franchising, to other parties? Take, for example, the disco. All they need to do is, let me look at the area where maybe, take for example, very close to us here, Magodo, franchise it to an individual who can money, because there is serious energy theft, I must let you know. And the discos are really not at a close range to close this particular thing. Can you go ahead and franchise? If the business is mine, that I know that I'm managing a particular estate, we are going to reduce it, because all you need to do is to bulk bill me. Some estates are being bulk billed. The disco, we have no issue about it. And what some of them are doing is now, redistribute that particular supply from the disco. So all you are doing is that you are minimizing your overhead by making sure that estates that have over 20 buildings, you are only giving them 1 bill. How they share the bill within themselves, you have no issue. It's their business. And what you have done is that you are creating business for some other arm in the value chain. So we now have some electricity distribution, agents who now provide that submetering to the people so that they can now agree and say, okay, we are getting this from the disco. The cost is this. We are giving certain allowance. Some are even integrating generator into it in such a way that they can guarantee you 24/7 power supply, and you pay into it. So it's part of what we're saying. So at that point, you don't need to be running after 20 customers in that network. All you are concerned is just one. And when they don't pay, you disconnect from source. So if somebody has paid, another have not paid, is the the edict of those within that estate. And that's what we're saying, that can you allocate distribution transformer, franchise it, so that people who have this investment, there are some people who have the money, they are looking for where to invest into. There are people who have the technical know-how, who can now, invite financier to say, okay, I promise you this commitment, give this thing. Because we need to monitor this value chain right from top to the bottom. So, and if you don't have that accuracy, from the distribution company, there is no how. We will not be complaining of this distribution company going into bankruptcy, not being able to meet their obligations.
So because the structure is somehow lopsided as it is, from your explanation, is that what is fueling the theft of electricity as it is? Speak to that.
Yeah, of course, because even when the disco claim they are monitoring, within themselves there are saboteurs who goes back and exploit customers, to benefit themselves. You see, corruption, you can talk that the federal government on their own, there is corruption everywhere. But even within the system, you see some people that have actually been pulled out of the system, goes back to the customer
advise them because they have the technical know-how to enrich themselves, which the disco, I must give them that credit, are seriously battling. And that's why we've been advocating that, can you now just take this off your radar, give it to investment? If 3 of us have 3 estates that we are managing for a particular disco, all you need is that this is the transformer that we are giving to you. All we need from you is that this billing. So the person you franchise to, take the edict of making sure that he meters everyone on that particular thing, of which you have taken the cost off you as an individual, now to that company or agent that is managing that franchising. So all I come is, I give you this bill, 1.5 million, of which you and I will see, because I'm going to meter your DT. So how you now get your money, allow theft to continue. So with that, the disco on their own can generate the revenue to make sure that they meet their obligation. The problem majority of them are facing, why they are unable to invest in infrastructure, is that meeting their obligation to the market operators, that they buy the power from transmission. It's not that they just transmit for them for free. When every day there are reports of what they discharge to each disco, and they are expected to pay back. So what, because of several failures in time past and debt accumulation, what market operators have done is that they draw from source. That's right. And it's now left if you are able to augment that particular thing. And that's why we're saying that the distribution company needs to be overhauled. Let's have a cleaner environment. Even when you look at our connection policy, some of us have said it, because that's the sector we are, it does not even speak well. If you must generate revenue, cobwebs here and there, there is no how. This person is pulling this supply. You'd see at times people will go for disconnection. Your light is connected, yours is connected. They are unable to trace. They will disconnect shitter for you. You that they are supposed to punish will be enjoying supply, and this man will be in darkness because the connection policy is wrong. Somebody is investing so much to build a house, but he's telling you that he wants to manage how he will do the connection to the grid. The first thing you must do, because even when you build that house and there is no supply, you're not going to enjoy that building of yours. So we should get more investment in you getting the right, connection policy that will be cleaner. You'll be able to trace. If you go to a developed estate, it's not something that comes cheap. They have the policy to tell you, in fact, we don't even want to see cable running, flying up and down. It's going to be an underground cable. Good investment. And when you go to those estates, you ask them, say, you people are enjoying supply. They paid for it. Because electricity on its own is not cheap.
But then we are mostly worried about inadequate power supply in the urban areas. How about, I'm wondering how much access those in the rural areas, the unserved, underserved, and peri-urban areas are able to be catered to, in terms of electricity distribution, because we are largely focused on the urban areas.
Yeah, you focus on where you are able to generate revenue first and ask the government to pump in more resources with the little generation that they are
So
having.
what happens to the renewables? Because thermal, we generate about 70% from the thermal, and hydro is about 27%, and renewable maybe about 2.2 or thereabouts. So what about the renewables for some of those urban areas? Because they've got some of these resources that they can tap from.
Yeah, some of them are actually investing into that. You see some of these organizations now, see a lot of panels, here and there, and they segment it. If they're able to get 8 hours power supply from NEPA, that is used from the distribution company, that is used to fuel the power of their destiny. And the solar on its own, when you have sun, is able to. So if you get that, use the remaining 16 hours, on the alternative power supply. But this, we have to say that even the renewable energy is not cheap to come by. It's got a lot of money. But when you look at the cost-benefit analysis, several people seem to, because of the reliability on the renewable energy, a lot of people are actually investing in that, knowing fully well that there is no assurance of you generating power. And for companies, like you said, that are actually going into that are setting up their organization in the rural area, they know that the cost of setting up, powering their site, from or powering their offices or their factory from the national grid might take too much. A lot of them are actually, having gas turbine within their encroach, get their own IPP, and they distribute supply. Part of what we have said is, can we have an handshake with some of these organizations that are building individual pipeline to even service the locality, the people in the rural area where they are at a particular cost that we can consider as their CSR, the corporate social responsibility, to those areas, so that those areas too, can develop and said, okay, this is one of the dividends of having a corporate organization within our environment. As we speak, I can tell you that most of the distribution company will concentrate more on the urban area. Even within the urban area, you and I, we've discussed this. 80% 20 rules applies here. Where I know I will have guarantee of income with ease, I would rather give them supply. I'm talking as a businessman, rather than where I'm going to have stress. And you discover that most of the time, you see some estates having more supply than areas where are really not too structured. It's because I'm guaranteed, that revenue to take care of my own, operating expense. Because if the company goes down, how am I going to survive to continue with it? So until government themselves, build on that area to make sure that we generate more so that other people can plug in, then this idea of saying, let's build IPP, give waivers. Let's see how we can ease the process of organization. Nothing stops this particular organization to have its own IPP. If you invest in it, then what you would do is, once that investment is done, look at your area, have good structure in such a way that you can distribute to the people in Adelolaye. And when they do that, they'll get the supply, they pay to you. Because you have the structure in place, you make your money. These are investment we expect, an opening up of the business, at least for us to have power supply, because it's very